You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
All right, with that, we are back for another week of some Sirius Sports. I'm with my guy, Al Dawg. What's going on, brother Al?
Back at it, man. Another wild week of sports. Another interesting time to be an American citizen here. And every day is exciting. Every day is new. Every day is more based than the last, it seems to me.
See, that's the perspective of somebody in their 30s.
Okay.
Right.
You're black pilled and you're like, okay, things are not as based as yesterday. Things are getting pretty bad.
I mean, it's been something that that I've been sort of sitting with, kind of like this. Like there's a lot of death in the air this month. You know, we're in Scorpio.
Yeah.
And I mean, just for me personally, a good friend of the show, not this show, but the Friday Firecast and Sunday Night Astro Live, and just going back a ways, my buddy Mark Malone, who actually shares the same name with a quarterback that played with the Pittsburgh Steelers at one point in time. But Mark is from England, and I met Mark through a wonderful gal named Jillian, and Jillian was my client for a long time, and she consulted me. Hey, what do you think about this guy? Do you think, you know, he'd be somebody that would work for me astrologically in life? So I looked at their charts. Yeah, he's a good guy. I said I would, you know, I would go for it. So they met. He's from England. They met in Minnesota, which is where she's from, and that was it. They never looked back. Got married. Mark moved to the United States. And they had three kids. Wow. They were together for six years. And he told me, I don't know, maybe about 6 months ago, that she had a really aggressive form of breast cancer, and did everything in his power to, you know, stop that train from leaving the station, and lost that battle. And she passed away 2 weeks ago now. And just, you know, he's got 3 kids, 2 girls. He's got a boy who's 3.5 who has autism. And this is a guy who you would like him because he started to make inroads into the U.S. political system, and he had figured out a strategy how to stop sort of the encroachment of what we would call globalism on a local level. And he was getting very popular. He started to have lots of like sponsors and donors, and he was showing up on all these radio shows. He showed up on a local Fox affiliate, I think in South Dakota. I think he might have been on Alex Jones. I mean, he was all over the place. So he was making waves, this guy. He's really, really brilliant. And then all that just came to a screeching halt, you know, because he had to take care of his alien wife. So, I mean, that's just kind of one piece. It's personal. I spent an hour with him on the phone today talking about, you know, the reality of that. And my girlfriend's cat, whom she's had for 14 years, he's got cancer. He's on his way out. It's Scorpio season. There's just like this death in the air. The A's are leaving Oakland, which we're going to talk about tonight.
Yep.
And that's a death. You know, the A's have a very rich and storied past with the city. We can, you know, expand that conversation to Oakland. And, you know, now once the A's are gone, it means the Warriors, who are still technically in the Bay Area, have moved across the Bay. And then the Raiders, of course, are playing in Vegas, where the A's will join them. So it's also sort of the death of sports in the city. And not just any city. Oakland has a really storied kind of blue-collared background. And I got all kinds of stories about Oakland sports, the A's, the Warriors. You know, my kid, I started taking him to A's games when he was just a wee lad. And, we had a pretty good relationship with somebody who sold luxury boxes for the corporations at the A. So she always used to get us really good tickets, and just had great memories of us being there. So that was the team that, he got weaned on. And so when he found out they were moving, he's 19 now, he was seriously depressed, right? It's part of his childhood that's going away. I mean, think about, if you were a kid and you were raised on the Red Sox, and then all of a sudden, oh, hey, this Boston thing's been great, but we're moving to Charlotte. And, let's say you were 20 years old when that happened. It may sound like nothing. I mean, I'm kind of used to shit like that.
Yeah.
Right. I can just flip the switch and go, oh, well.
The thing, when I heard about the Oakland A's going to Las Vegas, to me, because I don't have this nostalgic affection for that particular franchise that I might for the Red Sox. I don't think the Red Sox would move anywhere in 100 years.
No.
And if they did, there would be riots.
An example that I could give you. Right.
But like what I'm saying, when I heard the A's were going to Las Vegas, I was just like, because it just says it all about the current state of professional sports and gambling. It really says it all, because within the last 5 years, the Raiders have moved to Vegas. Las Vegas now has a professional hockey team, the Golden Knights, and now they have a professional baseball team in the Las Vegas A's. Does it hurt to hear me say the Las Vegas A's?
I mean, for me, not really.
Okay.
Because, I've gotten used to shit like this happening, right?
Okay.
Players getting traded. Like when I was a kid, when they traded Reggie Jackson, who's over here, when they traded Reggie Jackson to the Baltimore Orioles, I mean, that would have been like, I don't know, who was a big star when you were watching the Red
Nomar
Sox?
Garciaparra. When he left the team, I was super bummed out.
By the way, me and my kid met Nomar.
Okay.
I mean, he was playing with the A's for a season.
Okay.
And I got on the field, had a picture with him and Nomar.
Nice.
He's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, think about you being a kid.
Yeah.
And it's at the height of Nomar Garciaparra's popularity and production, and he's gone, right? So when that happened with Reggie Jackson, it was like I was not. I think I was 16 years old, and I was like fucking pissed.
Right.
And Charlie Finley, the guy in the checkered hat, who was the owner of the A's at the time, he saw free agency come in, and he knew he couldn't compete, so he just started to sell all of his players. And it was so controversial that Bowie Kuhn, who was the commissioner of baseball, he canceled all the sales. Said, you can't do this. You can't have a fire sale. Now the commissioner wouldn't say shit. If you wanted to sell your entire team now, they wouldn't give a shit. But that's when commissioners actually were commissioners. So then he had to pull all these guys back. Then he had to start trading them. And Reggie wound up with the Orioles for a season. They actually got a pretty good haul for him. They got Mike Torres and Don Baylor.
Yeah. Isn't this where the whole Moneyball thing started? Was with the Oakland A's, right?
Yeah. So Moneyball started with Billy Beane and the Oakland A's. And essentially what happened is that he ran into this guy named Paul DePodesta. And Paul was actually working for the Indians. He didn't have a really high position in the Indians front office. And I think Billy went to the Indians to secure a trade for a player. And he had a conversation with DePodesta, and he basically, DePodesta turned his world upside down. And he basically was able to take Bill James's sabermetrics. And Bill James was the guy who completely changed baseball. He turned baseball into a game of numbers and percentages, and the whole valuation of like what a player can do, versus the eye test, right? So Billy Beane started to, because they're on a limited budget, they started to invest in players whose statistics were not necessarily eye-popping, but they were key statistics in that they valued guys who scored runs and got on base. It didn't matter how they got on base. Right? It says I'm tinny. Hold on. What's my mic? I'm using my mic.
Yeah, your video is a bit lagging, but everybody in the chat decided that it's not a big deal. Your video is a little laggy, but whatever. You sound good. I sound good. I asked everybody. They said we sound good. So that's what
Okay.
matters most, you know?
Yeah, I don't know why it's tinny. Maybe I should take out this reduced background noise. Maybe that'll be better.
I got to ask you,
So
though.
anyway, what they did is they started to find value in players that other teams didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
And they were right. Their ability to the sort of the big story was Scott Hatteberg.
Oh, I remember Scott. He played on the Red Sox after.
He played for the Red Sox and he blew out his arm catching.
Okay.
And there's a famous scene in the movie Moneyball where what's his name? I forget his last name. The actor. He plays Paul DePodesta. And he basically says, you need to get Scott Hatteberg. And he's like, well, why? Because he gets on base and he scores runs. And that's part of the formula. So I think Chris Pratt played Scott Hatteberg in the movie Moneyball. And they turned him into a first baseman. And he learned how to play first base. And he became a really, really valuable member of that team. And I think for a while, I think the Indians broke their record, but they had the most consecutive wins at 21 wins in a row. And that was during the 2002 season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And that was like the height of Moneyball. And then all these other general managers like Theo Epstein came in. And in fact, the Red Sox had offered Billy Beane the job to become GM. So he was gonna take all that Red Sox money and use it to build a sabermetric Moneyball team. And that would have been, pretty amazing. But Theo Epstein knew what he was doing. He was one of these young guys that understood how sabermetrics works. So on the one hand, it turned Oakland into a scrappy contender every year. And on the other hand, it ruined baseball because they just fundamentally changed how baseball was played. So one of the things that was a big part of this whole idea with metrics was this shift where you play the third baseman at shortstop, the shortstop basically at second base. You put the second baseman in like a buck short position in right field. And if you had a left-handed batter up, which is why you would do that, then you would basically dare the left-handed batter to bunt the ball or hit it down the third baseline because it wasn't occupied. And I think the shift fundamentally not only changed defensive strategy, but it also changed the type of players that you would have at a certain position. So shortstop is a good example. So back in the day, if you got a shortstop who was like a Gold Glove winner, but he batted maybe 225 or 230, it was okay. Like if he had range and he could make all the throws, like a perfect example of that for a long time was Ozzie Smith, who played for the St. Louis Cardinals. And so you didn't have to have like a guy that could, carry his weight or more than his weight at shortstop hitting. But that changed fundamentally as the shift began to become more pronounced. So you could have a guy at the shortstop position with less range. Like he didn't have to go all the way kind of behind third and backhand something and have a cannon arm and throw a guy out. Because really what he was doing, he's either playing shortstop or he was playing second base. So fundamentally that changed baseball, that you could have these guys who were much better hitters and maybe more limited fielders, right? So the metrics and the technology and the science of the game changed baseball, and it changed in other ways as well. So one of the other things that came about is that Major League Baseball has really weird contracts. Like you sign your rookie deal, you're locked in for 6 years. And then after that 6 year, think you go into either arbitration, team option, or whatever, right? But that's your first big contract. And you don't really get to start making, let's say you're drafted out of high school, you're 18 years old. You won't potentially get your first big contract until you're 25. If you're drafted out of college, let's say you're 20, 21 years old, you're not going to get your first big contract until you're 28. So this is kind of problematic in a lot of ways for baseball. But what they did in terms, again, sabermetrics, is that they began to value certain attributes over others. So, for instance, a strikeout it's not a big deal in sabermetrics. Like, it's better to strike out than to hit into a double play, or it's better to strike out than, I don't know, just have a regular out. Because if you're striking out, there's probably a pretty good chance that you're trying to hit a home run. And so home runs are valued in sabermetrics. Strikeouts are no big deal. I think Kyle Schwarber, I think he led the league in home runs or close to it in the National League, and he had like a 198 batting average. And again, with sabermetrics, they really don't care about that stuff, right? So in order to deal with that kind of shift in like the types of players the teams put on their team, teams are starting to look for power pitchers, because power pitchers don't really have to develop. Like you have a power pitcher, and then a power pitcher has maybe one or two out pitches. You can get that pitcher faster to the major leagues, and then they could play longer off that rookie contract. So again, that was sabermetrics that was beginning to like sculpt, the types of players that would show up. So my kid played some competitive travel baseball. And one time we were at this baseball center that he would work out at. And the guy who was his coach, super nice guy, he showed me like a big program for a massive tournament. I think it was in Florida or South Carolina. And what's really interesting is that these tournaments have supplanted high school baseball to showcase talent. So scouts, they don't even go to high school games anymore. They just go to these massive tournaments where all the talent is gathered together. And so they're going to get the cream of the crop. I mean, they may have an area scout or somebody like that go to a high school game. So they showed me the program. And these are all guys that are like 16 and 17 years old. And I went through the height of all these players. And they're like 6'4", 6'5", 6'3", some are like 6'6". And it's crazy, right? And because what they've done is they've kind of gotten rid of guys that could, have 4 or 5 pitches, like Greg Maddux. Like Greg Maddux would not be a big deal in today's game, right? What they're looking for is they're looking for somebody that can throw between 95 and 99 miles per hour, get them up to the big leagues as fast as possible, and figure out an out pitch somewhere along the way. Like maybe we'll show you a changeup, or maybe we'll show you a cut fastball, and we'll work that in. So sabermetrics has changed everything. It's kind of like, in that regard, to me, it's almost like eugenics. And I saw that, even with my kid, and when he played travel ball, and they would just, pick guys based on their height. And they wanted big teams because they thought, okay, if they're big, they're strong, they can hit the long ball, or, they could, at that time, if you threw in the mid-70s at that level, that was considered pretty high heat. So it's fascinating. It started at the youth level all the way up through the competitive level, competitive youth, and all the way up to the pros. So now what's happened is Major League Baseball figured out that people were not watching as much. So they made rule changes prior to this last season. And one of the rule changes is that they got rid of the shift. So you can't do the shift anymore. And that's going to affect how teams assemble their rosters. They also made the bases bigger. And that actually encouraged more base stealing, which again with sabermetrics is considered, well, you're off. You're off. If you steal a base, there's a really good chance you'll get him out.
Right. And
Right.
another thing they did is they basically have a pitch clock, right? So the
Right.
pitchers can't.
Have
I
a
love
pitch clock.
that. I love that. I think that was a great rule change, personally, from a viewer
So I
perspective.
think unanimously people celebrated the pitch clock.
Yeah.
But Max Scherzer came out about a day or two ago, and he said that it's actually causing arm injuries because it's forcing pitchers into an unnatural rhythm.
Huh.
I don't really care about the time on a baseball game, but it's been widely received as a really good innovation to the game. So
Yeah.
you're going to get your games under 2 hours and 25 minutes roughly now.
Yeah. So I have a few questions to ask you about this whole ordeal. I want to get back to a point I had about, this kind of saying it all about the current nature of sports and betting and this team going to Las Vegas. I want to get your commentary on that. And do you think we'll see more teams head to Las Vegas? Do you think we'll eventually see an NBA franchise in Las Vegas? And the follow-up to that is, what do you think about the current state of baseball? Do you watch it personally? And then finally, I want to get into some of the Masonic symbolism of baseball, because I know you got that in your repertoire, and I know that you can speak to that, and that's a very interesting subject.
So I think in order to have an intelligent discussion about the A's leaving, I think we have to have a bigger picture, right? So what you have is you have an owner in John Fisher, whose parents owned the Gap, right? The Gap clothing chain. So John Fisher was born on third base, and they bought the team. Him and the guy named Ken, what's his name? Lou Wolf. He and Lou Wolf were partners, and they bought the team from Steve Schott and Ken Hoffman, who were the owners after the family that owned the Levi's Corporation, who is the Haas family. The Haas family were beloved. Everybody loved the Haas family because they saved the A's. And so Schott and Hoffman come in, they buy the team, and this is where Moneyball takes off, is under Schott and Hoffman. But then they sell the team, and there were numerous bidders for the team. Like, there were no shortage of bidders. But Bud Selig, who was at that time the commissioner of Major League Baseball, shut down all the other bids, and he sold it to John Fisher and Lou Wolf, because he and Lou Wolf were fraternity brothers in college. So you have one guy. Bud Selig is a piece of shit. He's a human piece of shit.
Okay.
Because there were people who wanted to buy the A's. Reggie Jackson, this guy that's right over here, right? He was part of an ownership group that wanted to buy the A's. Would have had local ownership. George Zimmer of the Men's Warehouse was part of that group.
Huh.
And they would have been fine owners. But he sold it to his college friend. If you follow Bud Selig was a guy who was a car dealer in Milwaukee, which is where he made his money. He had some connection to the Milwaukee Braves. The Braves wound up relocating to Atlanta, so Milwaukee was without a team. Well, there was a team called the Seattle Pilots, and they were an expansion team, and they played 1 year in Seattle, and their attendance was okay. It wasn't great, but it was only 1 year, and essentially what happened was that their ownership group was weak. Major League Baseball didn't offer them any help. They had a pretty nice little following up there, and they were about to start spring training, and then the team went into like default, like bankruptcy. Bud Selig bought that team, and to this day, I cannot figure out how much he bought the Pilots for. I bet it was fucking cheap, right? Like pennies on the dollar. So then he moves the Pilots immediately to Milwaukee, and then they become the Brewers, and that becomes Bud Selig's team. And I mean, just this idea that he bought it out of bankruptcy. And anyway, so then, because he wanted to get as close to the Milwaukee Braves as possible, because they played in the National League. As the commissioner of baseball, he says, okay, well, Milwaukee's going to the National League. In Houston, you're coming over to the American League. So Bud Selig gets to do all of that, right? It's all on his watch. All the steroid scandal happens on Bud Selig's watch. He's looking the other way. And I'm not a prude about steroids. So, but he knew what was going on. The owners knew it was a bunch of bullshit that they didn't know. But they had a strike thanks to Bud Selig, and they needed to pump some interest back in the game. So these guys were all pumped full of juice, and they all started hitting home runs. And that's when you had Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. They say baseball, right? That's on Selig's watch. I mean, but he's just a piece of shit. You had Ryan Braun. You had Ryan Braun, Aaron Rodgers' buddy. He got popped for steroids.
Yeah.
And Ryan Braun cost a guy his job, who was a tester.
And who is Ryan Braun? He's like a trainer.
Ryan Braun played. I think he's still playing, but he played for the Brewers.
Huh.
He was an outfielder for the, and he won the MVP award, but he was
no
jacked
way.
up on fucking roids.
Really?
And,
I think I know this. This guy is
yeah,
would look familiar to me.
And Bud Selig let him slide, right?
I know this guy. Yeah.
So here's the politically incorrect part, right? So Ryan Braun happens to be Jewish. Bud Selig happens to be Jewish.
Yeah.
John Fisher happens to be Jewish. Lou Wolf happens to be Jewish. And so you see this Jewish guy, cutting all these other guys, who are part of the same community, some favors. It's like, really? Why are you doing, it brings up, the whole kind of anti-Semitic thing in people's brains. And I'm not saying it's anti-Semitic to question somebody's allegiance or alliance, right? We're humans, and we have the ability to do that. And if we don't have the ability to do that, then we're just fucked, right? Mm-hmm. But that's how it gets labeled. So Bud Selig, he's a slime ball, and he's one of the reasons why the A's are moving. Huh. I mean, he's not the direct reason. The other part of this is that when you look at Oakland, in Oakland's current city management, the mayor of Oakland doesn't even own her own home, right? She's like, and for her, that's like a statement. That's like an economic statement. Well, how could you take somebody seriously who's the mayor of a city who doesn't even have a piece of the city, mm-hmm. right? So that's one. Number two, everybody on the city council for Oakland, they're all fucking social justice warriors and social Marxists, right? Huh. So you're having to make deals with those people.
So it's the next San Francisco, essentially, and it's Oakland's on its way to becoming that way.
Oakland is worse. It's
wow.
worse than San Francisco.
Jesus Christ, man, that's pretty tough.
It's worse because the crime in Oakland, in San Francisco, you'll get like retail crime. You get a lot of retail crime in San Francisco. Okay. In Oakland, you get carjackings, and they're everywhere.
Jesus.
Right? The crime in Oakland is way more ubiquitous.
So it's a Grand Theft Auto town, essentially.
And the amount of homeless, because Oakland is a much bigger city. San Francisco is small. It's only 7.5 miles by 7.5 miles.
Wow.
Oakland spans a much greater distance. So it's got more people, and it has much more capacity for human debris. And there's stories of people getting carjacked on the way to the A's games, and like it got really, really bad.
Okay.
And then you have these SJWs and the social Marxists. They all want a little slice of John Fisher's pie. Well, we need this for our community, and our people need this, right? So it starts off as a baseball only stadium down by the waterfront, and then it becomes this fucking capitalist come like socialist wet dream, and then everybody wants a piece of John Fisher and the A's. Huh. And it's really hard to do business in an environment like that. And John Fisher he's a Republican, right? He wants to make as much money as possible and doesn't want to deal with a lot of civic interference. And so he basically did this deal with Las Vegas. And I don't even think Las Vegas wants the A's.
I mean, I think they want a show. And I think it sort of reminds me of a residency. Somebody like Britney Spears, she does a show like once a month.
No, they want their own expansion team. They don't want the A's.
Okay, so from there, do you think they'll change it to like the Las Vegas Aces? Right?
Well, the Aces is
the Athletics.
The name of the WNBA team.
Oh God, how did I not know that?
I mean, they could call them the Las Vegas Kings.
Okay,
right,
something like that.
Yeah, so you have the Kings and the Knights. Yeah, they're going to get rid of the colors. They're going to get rid of everything. And Oakland basically tried to do a last-minute deal where they wanted the rights to the name and the colors. And Major League Baseball said no. You're not getting any of that.
Right.
And they're scheduled to play in a stadium, right, which is right now a parking lot next to the Tropicana. And yeah, it's a really depressing scenario. It's a depressing scenario for America. Because at one time Oakland was a thriving working class town. And the teams were working class. Like the A's were, these guys were like fucking salt of the earth. They used to fight each other in the locker room. But they were great. They won 3 World Series back to back in the 70s. The Raiders epitomized the blue collar, right? I mean, they were rough and tumble dudes. I liked to party. They'd party with fans. We used to go to this place called Ricky's, which was in San Leandro, and we'd go there. We'd watch games on Sundays. So I take my kid every now and then. He was really young, and Ricky's was a fucking institution, man. Like that's where all the Raider fans would go, or the Warrior fans would go. That place would be packed. People would be drinking beers and cocktails and having burgers, and it was a real mixed crowd. A lot of black working class dudes, a lot of white working class dudes, Latino. It was a real melting pot. And you never really got that on the other side of the bay. Not like that, right? And that was one of the great things about Oakland was these teams, these people, and I know it sounds kind of weird, but these people had pride in these teams because they reflected their values, right? You're
from Oakland, right? Originally, are you from the Bay Area?
I'm from
you
the
grew
Bay
up there?
Area. I managed an apartment building in Oakland for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So I know a lot about Oakland. That apartment building was on the border of the hood.
Okay.
And I saw some shit in that neighborhood, man. It was wild.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, the way you describe Oakland nowadays, I don't want to go there ever. I have no desire to check that place out.
No. So I did a whole thing on my 15 Minutes of Flame show, and there's this they're buying all this land not far from that part of the Bay Area. There's this place called Vandenberg Air Force Base. No, it's a private group that are going to start. It's a Silicon Valley group. They're going to start their own high-tech city there, right? So you're looking at like a 15-minute city from soup to nuts. And then ultimately, cities like Oakland are going to die.
Okay.
They're going to die because they have absolutely no economic structure whatsoever. Clorox used to be in Oakland. They were a big employer in Oakland. The Port of Oakland, which was massive, shut down, right? So the port isn't there. Clorox isn't there. All these anchor businesses they're just gone. Right. I don't know where they're getting their revenue from, to be honest with you. So, this is one of these cities that's a canary in the coal mine.
Yeah. So when did you decide to get the fuck out of Oakland? When did you say enough is enough? Did you have that moment?
Well, I went from Oakland to Berkeley.
Okay.
So I eventually matriculated to Berkeley in 1997. And I spent 3 years in Berkeley hanging out. That was fun. That was a lot of fun. And
yes,
then
these places sound like fun, back in that day. Like now in 2023, it's like
great.
Yeah, exactly. Like
they were great.
So much of America is effectively Grand Theft Auto town. Now, you know what I mean?
Now they're dangerous. I mean, seriously dangerous.
Yeah.
I saw a video about a month and a half ago, and it was this old black dude, and he had a fucking, popsicle cart, these dudes, these young black dudes, came by in their car and they shook him down.
Okay. They robbed
They
the homeless
shook
guy.
down Pops with
Okay.
his ice cream cart.
Oh, whoa. Okay. So you're talking about literal ice cream, not like a homeless person.
No, he was trying to make a little bit of money selling ice cream bars.
Okay.
Through the neighborhood.
Oh, wow. And they robbed him.
They robbed
That's
him.
ruthless.
That's right. That's Oakland.
Wow.
That's where it's at now.
Mm-hmm.
All the businesses downtown, they're all boarded up. They've left. Right. So the A's are the last team to turn out the lights there.
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't want to
Vegas,
play baseball there.
What's that?
I wouldn't want to play baseball there.
Well, not now. I mean, the fans are some of the best fans. They're
Okay.
awesome. But yeah, and then Vegas just becomes this weird city, lives up to its last chance status with the A's.
Right. I feel like an NBA franchise in Las Vegas is inevitable at this point.
That's
the way
going to be
things are going.
LeBron's franchise.
Okay. Well, they already have the summer league. The NBA summer league plays in Las Vegas. I think it's just a matter of time before one of these teams, like there was talk, even rumors about bringing back the Seattle Supersonics. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the next NBA team is definitely Vegas.
I think there'll be two teams. And I think Seattle gets the other team.
Okay, you think so? I think, man, it'd be crazy if like they went over in Europe, maybe like London got a team or something.
I think you would have a hard time selling that to people that are counting their carbon credits.
Okay.
Right. You'd have to have a vast treasure trove of carbon offsets to pull that off. But I think Seattle's going to get a team.
Okay.
And Vegas will get a team. And I think the Vegas team will be LeBron's team.
Okay, like he'll be a franchise owner after he stops playing?
Yeah, that's always been the plan.
Okay.
And it would be LeBron, and his silent partners would be the boys from Clutch. And probably have Tom Brady have a stake in the team. That's what I think.
Okay. Interesting. Now, do you currently watch baseball?
No.
Me neither.
No.
Yeah. I haven't watched since like the last time the Red Sox won the World Series. And I was only watching because I was in school at the time and I wanted to go to the parade and party. And I haven't really watched baseball since. It's kind of tough.
No,
it's kind of like golf. Like you could fall asleep watching it and then you wake back up and it's still on. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ambient sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think baseball, for me, the two best ways to experience baseball when I was into baseball was either being there at the game or listening to it on radio. I love listening to baseball on the radio.
That is fun. Sports in general on radio is kind of underrated. Like I kind of have been doing it in a more modern sense with YouTube. Like if I don't have the game on TV, I'll listen to it and go on a walk or something. That's a lot of fun.
It is. And when you're a radio broadcaster, you have to really paint a picture for people. It's a real art. And there was this guy, Bill King, who was the announcer for the A's, for the Raiders, and for the Warriors. He made his money with the Raiders. And Bill King, let me show you a picture of Bill King.
Okay.
Bill King was fucking iconic.
Yeah. And so I got to ask you a question because I've never experienced this where a team moves, right? Do people still follow them? Like, will Oakland Athletic fans still follow them into Las Vegas for a time period, or will they just flat out not give a shit anymore?
I don't know if that's going to translate, right? Mm-hmm. The Raiders, on the other hand, the Raiders are fucking popular in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And Oakland, so they will travel to those games.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can get
the Oakland Raiders, man, that's like a forever American brand. You know what I mean? Like if the Cowboys travel.
It's getting selling now, though, by being in Vegas because, and they'll get 2/3 of the tickets.
The thing about the Raiders for me is like they don't, for me, from an outsider looking from the other side of the country, I actually don't see them as like a blue collar team. I see them as like badass criminals. Right.
Well, they
actually, them being in Vegas helps that, in my opinion, their brand.
So that's Bill King.
Okay.
Look at this guy. He's just different.
Yeah. He's definitely an artist.
Oh, he was a total artist. He lived on a houseboat in Alameda and he wore sandals wherever he went. But he's one of the great announcers in American history, and
Wow.
and his famous tagline was "Holy Toledo, Holy Toledo."
Okay. So he's voice acting. He's adding a little zest into his
Yeah,
broadcast.
I mean that's why
Okay.
sports on the radio can be really good,
Yeah.
because it's got some spice and some drama. It's interesting. The A's, when they moved to California, they moved in 1968, so that was their first season, and that's the year of the monkey, right? So the monkey is the trickster, and the monkey is really, really playful. And the A's have all kind of like the team behind me were the swinging A's, and Charlie Finley paid all those guys money to grow facial hair, right? So it was like they were into all these shticks, but they won. They were pretty amazing, right? They were very colorful, and they all had nicknames. That was another part of the shtick. Like Reggie Jackson became Mr. October, but that was later. You had Jim Mudcat Grant, you had Jim Catfish Hunter, Sal Bando, the captain. Like they all had fucking names, right? And they kind of lived up to this kind of monkey status. They were definitely like, Hanuman. They were very trickster-like in their own way. And in fact, I'll give you an example. There was a World Series game, and they had Johnny Bench at 2-2. And I forget who the pitcher was. It might have been Holtzman or Hunter. And they did this thing. This is back in the day where you could do intentional walks. You actually had to throw the ball for an intentional walk. So it was 2-2. They go out and they have this little conference. Yeah, we're going to put them on. We're going to put them on. But they have a plan. So it's 2-2. And then the catcher, Gene Tennis, gets up, sets up outside. I think Holtzman throws him a ball out here, and it's the ball. Right. So Johnny Bench thinks I'm getting walked. And then Gene Tennis sets out up here. And then at the last minute, he goes into a crouch. And the pitcher throws a strike right down the middle. He's out.
Huh.
Right. I mean, that's like Hanuman. That's like the trickster. And the owner was kind of like that as well. He was a trip. Charlie Finley was a trip. He used to have this mule in center field. Who, like
mule.
back in the day, they had grass back there. He would eat the grass. And he would show up at the beginning of the game. He'd drive around the stadium in his white Cadillac with the top down. So the A's were kind of a spectacle, and they live up to that. Even the whole Moneyball thing.
Yeah,
but very
dude, I gotta say, man, what you're describing to me right now is fun.
Yeah.
Versus nowadays, baseball is very business oriented, right?
It's way too business.
Right. Like,
dude,
I'll give you a good example. Fenway Park, right? I used to go to Fenway Park as a kid. We used to go to games all the time. It was the type of stadium where you didn't necessarily want to bring your kids because there's drunks, there's people, they might be smoking, people yelling obscenities, but it was fun. It was so much fun, right? Nowadays, Fenway Park is a corporate outing. It's literally like, dude, the place is like, it's a country club is the best way to describe it. It's literally a country club, So baseball seems so much more fun. And I remember a time period when baseball was super fun. And nowadays it's like these dudes, they all got like the same body type almost. They all got the same almost look about them, the same demeanor.
That's the eugenics of sabermetrics.
Okay. That's what we're seeing live in action. It's almost like an engineering, if you will. Right?
Absolutely. The sport is being socially engineered by the math and the science of sabermetrics. I've been saying this forever.
Yeah. Can you name a single player on the Oakland Athletics currently? Because I can't name a single player on the Red Sox. I just can't. I used to know all of them, but I'm just not into it anymore. Can you name more than 5 on the Athletics currently?
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. They're all gone.
Right.
They're all gone. It's a bunch of young guys. I have no idea who the fuck they are. Oh, no, he got traded. They traded all their dudes.
But baseball is not going anywhere, right?
If we had this discussion 2 years ago, I could have named you a lot of the team.
Okay. But here's the thing, though. We're not interested anymore, but baseball's not going anywhere, in my opinion. And I think part of that is it's very Masonic in nature, right?
Well, baseball's a regional sport.
Okay.
It plays well. It plays well in regions. Like for instance, the Astrodome, wildly popular in Houston. The Houston Astros, wildly popular,
Yep.
and they'll sell out the Astrodome a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The Rangers, popular in Arlington, but the popularity may not translate nationally,
Okay.
right? I'll tell you who else is, like for instance.
I mean,
Well, the
Yankee
Dodgers,
Stadium's still selling out. The Mets are making crazy money.
Yankees,
The Cardinals,
perennial.
the Dodgers,
They're perennially making money,
right?
And they're making money both regionally and nationally. They have their own TV network,
Mm-hmm.
so they make a lot of money off of that.
The
But
Yes Network, I believe.
the Yes Network, right? But I was just thinking about this guy that used to play for the Cleveland Indians. His name was Joe Charbonneau. He won Rookie of the Year one year, and one of his claims to fame was that he could take the caps off the beer bottles with his eye sockets, right? Like that's how Major League Baseball players were wired.
Mm-hmm.
They were different. They were colorful. You know, they had personalities. And now a lot of them had nicknames. Now I'd be hard pressed to give you 5 nicknames in Major League Baseball, right? It's just it's a part of the American landscape that is fading. You know, we talked about how, you know, there were the aeons of football, right? Well, baseball represents America during its growth as an agricultural giant.
Okay.
Right? It's expanding, it's moving westward. You know, when you think of the movie The Natural, you know, where is he? You know, he's in some, you know, bumfuck place in the country. You know, a field of dreams, to build the field in a cornfield, right? That's a metaphor for baseball and baseball's connection to America's agricultural past. And that is like way behind us now. So it can exist in pockets, almost like a pocket universe, but it will never be ever what it was. And I think football supplanted baseball somewhere in the 70s, I think, probably the late 70s, became America's pastime. But yeah, the Masonic thing is built into the game. You know, when you look at the here, we'll just do visual. I can just probably pull this up really easy.
Yeah, I always found this so interesting. And the word Masonic to me just sort of means mind control, essentially. That's how I interpret it. And it's in this baseball, it's kind of a ritualistic representation of free Masonic ideals, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go into some visuals here.
Yeah.
And this is just kind of a random sampling. But you can see that the compass and the square are actually built into the field itself, right? It's built into the field. And of course, there's this whole any of the ball sports are connected to ball, right?
Ball is a deity, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Ball the deity. So, you know, bull, ball, they're all connected. Then this is interesting. You can see some of the Masonic influences on. It's almost like a piece of alchemical art here.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fascinating. Yeah, I mean, and then you get into 2-ball cane. It's usually like golf sticks, but you can use the 2 balls, right? Like that's 2-ball cane, right? 2 balls. So these would be the canes, right? And usually there'd be 2 balls, but there's just 1 ball here. But again, you also see the compass in the square. So the compass in the square is sexual. You can see it, right? It's all about sex. So this is a woman with her legs spread, right?
Okay.
And this is a guy theoretically going in to mount the woman with. So it's like this theoretical principle of creation.
Huh.
But yeah, then you get into the numbers of baseball, and the mound itself is 60 feet 6 inches. Like, why the fuck did they put 6 inches in there? Right? Why did they put 6 inches under? Why not just 60 feet?
Right.
Right. So it's all 3 6s and 9s.
Mm-hmm.
3 6s and 9s. So 7 plays a role as well. Like three strikes, 4 balls. There's 7. And then so that a lot of that too is also connected to Tesla, right? Because Tesla talks about 3 6 and 9.
Right.
You get 3 6 and 9 in baseball all the time. You get 3 outs, right? You get 9 innings in baseball. You get 90 feet between the bases. When you flip 9 over and it's 6, you get 60.6 feet from pitcher's mound to home plate. So you get all the 3 6 9 plus you get the 7 with 3 balls and 4 strikes. But the 3 6 9 plays a big role. So yeah, it's totally based on Masonic magic for sure. And the weird thing about baseball, it's kind of like in some ways hockey, although hockey's more omnidimensional. So baseball, there's only one player that faces the field, and that's the catcher. And everybody else is facing the other direction. It's a weird sport that way. And it's an individual sport that also depends on people on the team, which is different than other sports. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, if you look at baseball during that period of time that was popular, it was very metaphoric with America, right? Like the idea that you could pull your own weight and do well and rise through the ranks. You know, that was an expression of this meritocracy that America was theoretically about. And nobody could help you. Like, nobody can help you swing the bat. Nobody can help you field the ball. Nobody can help you throw the ball. And the other sports, you can get some help. Like if a guy blows by you when you're a point guard and you got a big fucking center waiting for him, boom, right? You get help. Or if you're a tackle and you miss a block and then there's a running back in the backfield to pick the guy up. Baseball's not like that.
Right.
So I think it captured this idea during a certain period of time in America where those kinds of ideas and values were prevalent, and it was part of the American dream.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, so it's a dying sport, and it'll be interesting to see where it is. I don't know, 3 or 4 years from now. The other thing that people don't talk about a lot with baseball is how there used to be a tremendous amount of Black athletes that played baseball.
Well, Black American more specifically, right? Versus Dominican, which is kind of black,
yeah,
right?
Right. And they just don't play the game anymore.
Right. It's mainly Dominican, man. Like when I see a black player in Major League Baseball, like they speak Spanish, they have a Spanish last name, you know, and they come from the islands.
They're from the Dominican Republic,
right?
Or they're from Curacao.
Mm-hmm.
Has some players. Cuba has players.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, a lot from the Dominican Republic.
Mm-hmm.
And they've essentially replaced a lot of Black American players because they've left for other sports. They left for football. They left for basketball. And it's a shame because a lot of them were absolutely terrific players. And I think that's another reason why the sport has fallen off, because you don't get a kid who's an incredible athlete, three sport athlete, decide that he wants to play baseball.
I don't know about that. I know at least one. I know a few. Like, well, okay, you don't have the Deion Sanders and you don't have the Bo Jacksons anymore. Specifically, what you're talking about, the Black American who plays football and also plays baseball, or the Michael Jordans who plays basketball and also plays baseball. We don't really see that anymore.
I mean, I'm talking about somebody that you might be remotely familiar with, like Jim Rice.
What Jim Rice do?
Jim Rice played for the Red Sox.
Oh, fucking Jim Rice. Oh my God. Okay. Jim Rice. Okay. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
Jim Rice was a great player and a great athlete. He didn't have to be like a guy who played multiple sports, but you just don't get guys like that anymore. They're playing defensive back. You're playing for Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
So baseball is baseball's, I think, best hope is to somehow figure out the global game, because it is played. They've got a big league in Korea. Of course, they have the Japanese league. It's very popular in Latin America. I think if I were baseball, I would try to become much more of an international sport, and I would try to have, maybe once every 3 years, like global playoffs, where the team that wins the World Series in the Major League Baseball plays a team in a tournament.
Like a baseball World Cup would be really cool.
Yeah, like the team that won the Japanese League Series.
Yeah.
And the team that won the Korea League World Series.
Right. So I think that
I would do that like maybe every 3 years.
Yeah.
And I would try to make baseball much more global than it is.
Right. Like its prevalence has been slowly eroding in American culture, but it's tough for me to say that it's dying because I just pulled up this article here where they basically say that baseball actually has the second highest player salary behind basketball. So the average basketball player salary is 8.5 million. Average baseball player salary is 4.9 million. Formula One is number 3 at 4 million. Average soccer player is 3.9 million. Average hockey player is 3.5 million. And at number 6 is football with an average of 2.7 million, followed by golf with an average of 1.485 million. Then number 8 is UFC. Then NASCAR.
Well, I mean, that's great, but this World Series was the least watched World Series.
But like they still generate a lot of money, and the players still get paid a lot. So it's something that, people have been saying it's dying for as long as I can remember, but it's still generating a lot of cash just because they can play
it's a regional sport.
Games per year, right?
It's a regional sport. Like the Houston Astros make a lot of money, but it's regional. They're not making, there may have been a time when somebody wanted to buy a Jose Altuve jersey before he cheated. But these teams are regional. But there are a few players in baseball who have standout status, like Aaron Judge, right, or Shohei Ohtani. But there aren't many. There aren't many. So you don't get a lot of kind of iconic players on a national level. And because of that, I don't think it. I just think they need to have more connections internationally if they want the sport to continue. And who knows with these people, right? The other thing about baseball is that it's like printing money. Most of these sports don't pay any taxes, or most of these teams don't pay any taxes. If they do, they've got a weird ratio tax rate, right? So, which is barely anything at all. Anyway.
Yeah, let's keep it in the Bay Area, man. Do you want to talk about Draymond next?
Let's talk about Draymond.
Yeah, Draymond Green, that ignorant son of a bitch. Draymond Green. He's at it again, choking players and attacking people. What do you truly think about Draymond Green, Robert Phoenix?
I think, I have two thoughts. One, I think he's a Machiavellian mastermind.
Okay, wow.
That's number one. And number two, he's about as close as it gets to a narcissistic sociopath at a high level that the NBA has. I was listening to this guy, Andrew Perloff, and this woman, I think this sports show, and they were talking about Draymond Green. And I've been talking about how, like, in the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s, there were players that would fucking take Draymond Green's head off.
Yeah. But first of all, why are we talking about him? Because he choked the guy, right? He
choked Rudy Gobert,
right?
Which is one of his latest criminal acts,
right? And he has a history of this. He punched his own teammate. He punched Jordan Poole.
And he ruined Jordan Poole's career.
Okay, so he has a history of violence and attacking people on the court, or even
he
practice court.
He kicked LeBron James in the nuts one time.
Yeah,
he stomped on Domantas Sabonis last year playoff game. And it's not just his visceral violence.
Yeah.
Right. Like, he'll just fuck things up. Like, he kept getting on Kevin Durant when Durant was a Warrior. And he kept saying, why are you going to be a free agent? Why are you going to be a free agent? You're just a bitch. You're just a bitch, Kevin. Right. And Kevin Durant didn't like it. And in terms of the hierarchy of that team, Kevin Durant was way up here and Draymond Green was down here.
Yeah.
Right. So Draymond actually got suspended for one game for calling, and this was during a game. Right. They got into it during a game. Like Draymond has zero
Impulse control, it seems.
Zero impulse control.
And he seems like an obnoxious person, just an obnoxious personality, and somebody who has this confidence to just not censor how annoying they truly are. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. So, yeah. I mean, but on the other side of it, he's also very Machiavellian. Right. Because if Kevin Durant wasn't going to be on that team, which is going to fuck the team up, theoretically, there would be more money for Draymond.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened with Jordan Poole when he clocked him. It's like, ultimately, there's going to be more money for Draymond, one way or another. Like, he kind of figured that out. Like, there's a part of him that is so Machiavellian and sociopathic that it will even sacrifice his own team's best interests, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have his chart up. Let me bring his chart up here.
Yeah. Did you know that Draymond has a podcast?
Of course I do. It's
okay.
It's ridiculous.
How much would you have to be paid per hour to listen to it?
Oh my God.
I'm going $175 an hour, and I could only do it 1 hour a week.
I would base it on how much I charge for an hour session with a client.
Okay.
Which is $250.
Okay.
That's how much I'd have to pay me.
Yeah. Because I don't want to hear Draymond
he has
talk.
Nothing interesting to say. Nothing at all.
Right. And I guess he podcasts like right after games.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's like, why don't you fucking think about what you did?
Yeah, exactly. And why don't you just shut the fuck up about your team's business? I think that's sort of Bush League. You know what I mean? To just sort of talk about the game after the game to your audience and not like your teammates. I think there's something weird about that, and I don't like it.
Well, one of the things that he stormed the beach on is that this was new media. We're the new media.
Oh yeah,
We're
okay, Draymond.
You don't have to go through the middleman to get to us.
Real original.
It turns out that the new media was just as fucking obnoxious as the old media.
Absolutely.
Right? And even more so because they didn't have anybody to hold them in check. Right? Like every now and then I watch Gil's Arena. Do you ever watch that show?
I kind of like Gilbert. I catch the clips because I'm not going to watch like a full hour, but I will catch the clips. And Gilbert Arenas has some personality.
Gil's
right.
got some personality.
He pulled a gun on one of his teammates in the locker room, right?
What's that?
Did he pull a gun famously on one of his teammates in the locker room? Yeah.
I think was it Javaris Crittenden or somebody like that?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And then he has Kenyon Martin on there. And that was an interesting episode when Kenyon Martin's kid got traded in the James Harden deal.
Interesting.
And Kenyon Martin, lives in LA. His kid's playing for the Lakers, living right around the corner from him, bought a house right, and he gets traded. He gets traded to Philly.
Okay.
And Kenyon Martin was emotional on the show. He started to cry.
Wow.
Because he was really looking forward to watching his, going to the arena, watching his son. His son's right around the corner. It was like perfect for about 4 games or 3 games.
The NBA is seriously hereditary. Like there's so much of that.
And Kenyon, he's one of those guys back in the day that would have eaten Draymond Green alive.
He would have. He was a thug. Yeah. For real. So would Rasheed Wallace. So would Ben Wallace.
The NBA today is so soft. It's so soft. He's like an apex predator because there's nobody to push back on him.
Yeah. No. I would say this about Draymond Green. Draymond Green, if you keep acting like a junkyard dog. If you keep if you keep acting like a junkyard dog, eventually you're going to get put down. I think eventually he's going to run into something or somebody who's not going to take his bullshit. You know what I mean? Somebody who's going to swing. Because what's a weird thing about the NBA is a lot of those dudes haven't been in fights because they're large and nobody wants to fight them. Nobody wants to mess with them, right? Versus the guys that are like 5'7", 5'8", they've been in a ton of fights and they're really good fighters. But I think highly suspect.
I think Draymond's a bully.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying.
That's clear.
So somebody needs to pop him. That's how I feel. Somebody needs to clock him.
The NBA is such a soft league now. He's like an apex predator in a very soft league. Like somebody
needs to punch him.
I've gone through the rosters of these various teams. thinking, well, is there a guy out there who could live one on Draymond? I'll tell you, guy, if you ever rubbed him the wrong way and got him emotional, I'll tell you, a guy who could drop Draymond. It's Kawhi Leonard.
Okay.
You know why? You don't fuck with the guy that doesn't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that don't say anything are usually the most dangerous.
Like, here's the thing, though. What I see in the NBA is a lot of posturing. There's a lot of chest-to-chest confrontations. But how often do you see a guy throw a punch in the NBA? Maybe once a season, right? How often does it really occur?
Last year was Isaiah Stewart and LeBron James. They were beefing.
Yep.
Hardcore. Yeah.
Okay. They throw punches?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I got to check that out. But how often would you say it happens during the season?
Isaiah Stewart got a nickname out of it called Beef.
Yeah.
And they shortened his last name to Stew. Now they call him Beef Stew.
Would you say it happens less than 5 times a season?
Yeah, that's about right.
Exactly. Because I see just a lot of tough guy stuff. You know what I mean? But Draymond is somebody who can cross that boundary. And I think he's going to run into the wrong person, whether it's Kawhi Leonard or somebody else. I think it's inevitable for his pattern of behavior.
You know, he may run into somebody off the court too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Back in the day, that's what happened to Charles Barkley. He was kind of Draymond 1.0.
Yeah.
And Charles Barkley would get into hassles sometimes at bars. And Charles Barkley threw a guy through a plate glass window at a bar. And, this is back when there was no such thing as social media.
Uh-huh.
And you'd read about it and they would talk about it, but it wouldn't go much further. There was a guy who played for the Warriors. His name was Latrell Sprewell.
I remember Latrell. He choked his coach.
He choked his coach.
Yeah.
And Latrell sat out 50 games. He choked PJ Carlesimo.
Yeah.
And not only that, but Latrell had a pit bull that bit his daughter's ear off.
Jesus Christ.
Didn't put the pit bull down.
Oh my God. You know what? He should have to live in a cage with that pit bull. He should be in a cage with his beast if he loves it so much.
But that's how the NBA used to be. Like David Stern lived up to his name. He was Stern.
Mm-hmm.
And you would, if you pulled some shit, you got suspended. There were guys who were on their second, third drug suspension. They were just gone. They were out of the league. Like, just gone. There was no, Stern had zero. He had some tolerance, but not a lot. Not a lot. If you got into your third drug bust, you were done. You would never play in the NBA again. Now, today's players don't do drugs that much. David Palmer's calling me.
I don't know, man, because I saw a crazy clip recently, and it was Mark Cuban, and he was talking with Beverly, who I believe is on the Lakers. So Patrick Beverly, he's got a podcast, and he's talking with Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
And Mark Cuban's talking about how, I know who smokes weed. People are smoking weed all the time in the hotel rooms. But if it gets ridiculous, that's when I start to get rid of people. And he's like, yeah, everybody smokes, but how much are you smoking? And if it gets to a point where you're reeking up every hotel room, that's when they do something. And that, to me, says that it's more, well, the weed anyways is at least tolerated in the NBA.
Back in the day, these guys were getting high on coke all the time, freebasing and
freebasing. Wow.
Lenny Bias, who's going to play for the Celtics.
He overdosed, yeah.
OD'd on coke. I mean, it was really bad.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm sure there are some players that do the yay, right? But I'd say by and large, you're mostly dealing with weed smokers.
Yeah. Than
anything else.
Right.
Let's talk about Draymond's chart.
Okay.
There's no time for him. By the way, you grew up in, which is a pretty rough neighborhood.
I didn't catch that. What was it? He grew up where?
Saginaw, Michigan.
Okay.
It's a pretty rough place. And I was looking at his chart for, like character flaws. Like, where does Draymond go south? And I think some of it has to do with some of these inconjuncts. So the inconjunct in astrology is a 150-degree angle with two planets that have nothing to do with each other, right? So he's got an inconjunct with Pluto and the moon. So Scorpio and Gemini have nothing to do with each other, right? But here at a 150-degree angle with less than a 3-degree orb, now all of a sudden there's a relationship. And what is that relationship? He's got moon in Gemini, which means he can be a little erratic, right? And he's got this sun-moon square. That's the only square he has in his chart. So I think the impulse control is here with the moon in Gemini, because he and Jordan Poole were cool. They had their lockers next to each other, right? They were cool. And Draymond was his big bro. And then all of a sudden, he fucking snapped on him. And to me, that's very Gemini-like, right? Like, we're cool, unless we're not cool for whatever reason. And Jordan Poole would get under his skin a little bit because Jordan Poole was shit-talking him. But he's got this sun-moon square. And, his sun in Pisces is pretty well lined up here. He's got some interesting things going on with Uranus and Neptune. And he's got a Sun-Pluto trine. And people with Sun-Pluto trines are serious characters, right? Like they're in it to win it, and they're in it till the death usually, and usually pulling on other people's money and resources while they're doing it. So he's got a pretty serious Sun-Pluto trine, and then he's got this Sun trine with Chiron, which is really kind of weird, right? Like he has Chiron in Cancer, and to me, this goes back to his home life. Like something happened when he was a kid. I don't know what it is, but I can say it happened between the age of 9 and 11. And he was probably very embarrassed about whatever happened during that period of time. He strikes me as somebody who maybe when he was younger, he's probably overweight, maybe, right? That's what I think. And that's where his chirotic wound comes from. So usually what happens is that when we have that chirotic crisis or that chirotic wound in our chart, which is associated with a degree of Chiron, we revert to that age where we experience that wound. So for Draymond Green, he would immediately go back between being the age of 9 and 11, right? And whatever happened to him during that time, if he's under some amount of stress or pressure, or his perceived vulnerability or weakness, that's the age he's gonna return to. And for other people, it can be even much younger. Their wound at times can get them really into a deeply triggered kind of, almost pre-verbal state, and they'll do things that they don't even know why they're doing them. But it's so hardwired in because that's the nature of the chirotic crisis. So that plays a big role. And we see Chiron opposing Neptune. And I think that's where he has a really thin skin. Right? It's that Neptune-Chiron opposition. Now, most people have Chiron oppose Uranus in their chart. People like post-2000 tend to not have it as much because the separation of those two bodies. But he also has this Neptune-Chiron. So I think he's very sensitive, right? Like there's a part of Draymond that is negatively sensitive. Like there's positive sensitive, which brings about empathy and compassion, understanding universal suffering, right? Things like that. It makes you human. And then there's negative sensitive, which is undue sensitivity. And I think he's got that. And he has it with this Neptune-Chiron opposition. And so when he's triggered, he goes back to the age of 9 or between 9 and 11 when that happens. And then this thing with Pluto, the other planet that's playing a role here is going to be Saturn, right? And what is it? 19. It's really at the edge of looks like it's Mars. So he has Mars at 24. Looks like it's right under that 3-degree orb. So he's got Mars in conjunct the moon and Pluto. So we have a yawn here. And Mars is anger. Mars is energy, right? It's Mars in Capricorn. He's got Saturn Mars conjunction. Draymond Green's fucking rich. Like, he has taken advantage of being in Silicon Valley and connecting with Joe Lacob, who comes out of Sequoia, which is this hedge fund. Really, really, like, if you want to work with Sequoia, the minimum buy-in is probably about $1 million, right? And they'll take your money. And so Draymond Green got in early on Invisalign, and when the stock went public, made a shit ton of money off of Invisalign. And so he's really profited off of other people's money in a situation. So you can see that with the Saturn-Pluto sextile. You can see that with sextile. Draymond Green is into power. Like, I'll tell you right now, his goal, he's done playing basketball, is to own an NBA franchise. I could totally see this in his chart. He'll want to own an NBA franchise. He's not a guy that's just going to say, hey, thanks for the memories. It's been great. I'm going to go play golf and set up a nonprofit. No, I don't think he's very good with the media. Everybody says he's going to be the next Charles Barkley.
I don't think so. Charles is funny and likable. Draymond's not likable.
He's not likable. He's not funny. Charles Barkley is self-deprecating. And Draymond Green would not be able to even define self-deprecating.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe
Charles is naturally funny.
Charles is funny.
Yeah,
all those guys are Pisces too, which is weird, right? Charles is a Pisces. Shaq's a Pisces. Kenny's a Pisces. Draymond Green is a Pisces.
Interesting.
And I've talked about this before, how basketball is an incredibly Pisces sport. And it has to do with the flow. Draymond also has this true node in Aquarius. And you can see that with him and Clay and Steph. Right? The core three. And, he's basically ridden on their coattails. Like, Draymond Green on any other team is not nearly as good.
Right.
He's just not. He'd be good, but he's not like, what, 4 rings or 5 rings, whatever they have.
And he's been on the Warriors forever.
Yeah.
It seems like. And
so he's got the true node in Aquarius. So he's hip, right, to the team thing. And he, even in terms of his role, like, he'll play second fiddle. He'll shoot less. He'll rebound. He'll set screens. He's a good passer. I mean, those are all attributes of Aquarius, which is, I'll find my role in the team. I know that I'm not going to score 8 points a game. Well, that's Clay and Steph. So I'll do these other things. So he's good at that. And he has Venus also in Aquarius, which I also think makes him a bit on the sociopathic side. Venus in Aquarius. But he's got an interesting chart, and he's got a fair amount of earth. He's got a fair amount of water. He's got a lot of water. He's got some balance in the chart. It's not like he's completely underwater or he's just like a supernova and he's going to flame out. So, he's got a lot of kind of dispersed elements. He also has a fair amount of mutable and fixed and cardinal. So he's good at starting things. He's good at changing things up, and he's got some finishing ability. Like, he'll play out his contract with the Warriors unless they trade his ass. So he's there for another 3 years, right? And so he's got a fairly balanced stable of what they call the triplicities, and fairly balanced elementally. But I think the key to his chart is that Chiron, and then that those in conjuncts with the moon and the anger management and Pluto and Mars, and just figuring out how to work it out. And he can flip on you. The guy can flip on you. He's one of those guys, and I know you know these guys, Al. He's one of these guys that when you were young, right, he's super cool, you're hanging out, you're partying, and the next thing you know, right, flips. You there? You know those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've experienced things like that where,
Like you're just hanging
things are
out in a
cool.
room, everybody's vibing, and they're cool, and all of a sudden they just fucking flip.
But there has to be
Right.
something that sets them off. You know what I mean?
It's usually something that somebody says, and maybe they take offense to it that they shouldn't,
Uh-huh.
right? And they're trying to set their tone in the room, and they're going to try to establish who they are, and it's just like bullshit, right?
Uh-huh.
But, there are those people, you hang out with them, and I party with guys like that. Most of they just flip, and it's like, I don't want any part of you right now. Go back to the cool guy that you were.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Draymond's got that potential. He's like cool, and then he'll flip on you. And the thing with Rudy Gobert, that was just like out of control, man.
Yeah.
Like that was a serious fucking chokehold.
Yeah. It almost like it was something that he planned on doing. Like he just wanted an
Oh, he
excuse.
totally planned it.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
He couldn't wait. He's probably got a little black book with guys' names in it and what he plans on doing to them. And he and Gobert have gone after each other on Twitter over the years, right?
Really?
Oh yeah, he couldn't wait. He was like, here comes the apex predator. He took the shit out of Rudy Gobert.
Well, Rudy's got to get him back. He's got to do something back. He should. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but he should when he gets his opportunity. It's crazy.
Here's what I think about Draymond Green. Draymond Green will have his comeuppance.
Yes.
With somebody that he will least expect it.
I like that.
And it'll be out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. A guard that can throw a punch will knock him the fuck out. You know what I mean?
I mean, it could be somebody off the street, right?
Yeah, that could happen as well.
Well,
you know who did that happen to? Speaking of the NBA, Paul Pierce got stabbed in a Boston nightclub, ran into the wrong person, right? The only thing that saved his life was the fact that he had a leather jacket on during the time. And there was another basketball player that got into a physical confrontation in Boston, coincidentally, running into the wrong person, was Jahlil Okafor. Do you remember him?
Yeah, he didn't play very long.
Right. He did not have a great NBA career, but he just said the wrong thing to the wrong person and ended up getting into a fight. And with Draymond's pattern of behavior, he's gotten away with this for too long. And I can just sense it.
He's been enabled. I mean, that's the other part of this whole thing, right? Yeah. and the paradoxical irony is that Steve Kerr, who's the coach of the Golden State Warriors, whenever there's a public shooting, Steve Kerr never misses an opportunity to get on his fucking soapbox and talk about taking guns away. He'll never address black and black crime. He'll never talk about all the violence and all the robberies and all the theft in Oakland. He'll never address that.
Right.
And he has enabled Draymond Green.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so in a weird way, it's like a microcosm of society. Like Draymond Green has become the guy who snipes $900 from Walgreens, right? Because they've let him do it over and over.
Right,
again.
right.
Right now, and then that's a gateway crime. And
so Steve Kerr does not enforce crime, just like the city of Oakland, just like the city of San Francisco.
He's the same. Steve Kerr is part of the problem.
Yeah.
The franchise is part of the problem. Yeah, and I've said this before. I think who runs the Golden State Warriors? Is it Mike Dunleavy Jr.? Is it Steve Kerr? Is it Joe Lacob? No, it's Draymond Green. He runs the freaking Warriors, right? And that's why I think Draymond, there's a part of him that is so Machiavellian, and he knows that he can get away with shit. He knows it, right? And he also knows that he probably scares the shit out of some people inside that organization. So a lot of it is probably fear, right? Because you just don't know, what's going to happen with the guy. And they've tried to keep him on kind of a loose leash. And it was really interesting. After the game, Kerr defended him.
Oh my God.
Rudy kind of had his arms around Clay, and Draymond, got Rudy and pulled Rudy off, and that's usually how you do these things. So he was defending Draymond Green. And I think that after he got suspended for 5 games, Kerr started to sing a little bit of a different tune. And now he's been more critical of Draymond after that event. But, this is a guy who I think ruined Jordan Poole's career by just completely crushing him during that practice. Jordan Poole has not been the same player since. And I think some of it is psychological. And I think some of it, and a lot of people have kind of poo-pooed this, but the degree of force that Draymond hit Jordan Poole with could have done something to his brain. Like Jordan Poole was always kind of flashy and obnoxious on some level, but he seemed to be a very different person on the other side of being punched. Like he would even give up playing defense in games, and now he's completely self-destructing in Washington. So, Draymond, if his goal was to destroy Jordan Poole, he achieved it. He achieved his goal. And he didn't do no punishment whatsoever from Draymond, not from the team, not from the league, right? David Stern would have fucking punished Draymond Green. He would have suspended him for half a season for that. I guarantee you. Half a season. But he was the next night or 2 nights later, opening tip-off, he's doing fucking special for TNT,
right?
TNT, rather, yeah.
Yeah.
He's doing a special for him, right? It's like, you're gonna be fucking kidding me. You're celebrating this dude. This is like 2 days after he punched Jordan Poole into the fifth dimension, right? Like, and you're celebrating. What kind of message is that? And he never once apologized. He went about it in a roundabout way. And then, now that the team was winning at the beginning of the season, he was gloating. Oh, we're a different team this year. Gee, I wonder why. Fucking leave it alone, dude. Right? He's taking victory laps. Well, he's not taking victory laps now. They're 6-6. He's suspended for 5 games. So, yeah, they've created a monster. And I feel like that it has this reflection of what we do socially, or what we've been doing socially. And we've been allowing the criminal element in our society just get away with more and more and more and more, particularly after George Floyd, Black Lives Matters.
Yeah, 2020 was an interesting turning point, wasn't it? For everything.
Yeah.
Things became very clear to me in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So,
well, separating the wheat from the tares, as they say, right? It's becoming very clear. It's getting clearer every day. Clear every day who's controlling the strings, who's pulling the strings. And you know who's doing it? The people that are pulling the strings are the ones that you cannot criticize.
And I don't know what you mean by that at all. So, anyways, what else is going on in the world of sports that you wanted to talk about tonight?
ESPN bet.
I just thought it was interesting. I just thought that was wild. I didn't think that ESPN would come out with a betting app. And for me personally, it's if I don't have a successful year with some of my predictions and they're not really looking that great between the Jets. I took a new position on the Minnesota Vikings, just thinking about that Dobbs guy. They lost to the Broncos. So if I don't have a good year betting, I'm kind of done with it because it's too pervasive. It's too mainstream. I thought I had an edge with my narrative-driven sort of geopolitical angle as far as futures betting went. And if it doesn't work out this year, I'm kind of done because it's just becoming too mainstream and it's not cool to me anymore.
Well, I think it's incredibly scripted. That's number one. And number two, I think there's just so many variables. Like when we had Gracie on, and she talked about MMA stuff, you're from an astrological perspective, you're using 2 charts, right? That's it. You're just going charto, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how it goes down. With football, there's just so many charts and so many variables.
Yeah.
That I think, you can kind of catch fire sometimes with certain players and certain coaches.
Yeah. Or teams. Like I like to hack into the script. That's kind of my angle. But the Jets still could win. The Minnesota Vikings could still win, but
I think the
I don't
Jets are
know.
toast, brother.
Yeah, they're fucked, man. They're an awful team to watch. Let me tell
Yeah.
you, they don't score more than like 14 points a game. They
Yeah.
suck. So
Yeah.
unless Aaron Rodgers comes back and wins every single game, they're pretty much fucked. The Dobbs thing to me was interesting. This astronaut quarterback. There's so much narrative involved with
We
that
talked
guy.
about him last week, right? I
Yeah.
mean, he's the freaking golden child.
Exactly. Like there's so many narratives. Okay, there's the racial narrative. He's like half Chinese, half black. Okay. There's the cancer narrative. He's apparently a cancer survivor, right?
Yep.
And then after that, there's the whole space travel narrative, right? And who knows what that could really entail. And they're trying to build this guy into this superhero where he's like an astronaut quarterback. So I see so much narrative in that. I took a position on the Vikings. We'll see how it goes. They still have a shot, more so than the Jets at this point. But yeah, we'll see how it goes with this season. And
What do you think of this comment by Harriet? She says, I think a lot of players are just chasing stats now with betting. What do you think of that?
I think players are always chasing stats because when you look at something like the NBA, it's a team game, but it's also an economic war between your own teammates where your stats directly correlate to millions of dollars. So if I'm a player and I get 20 points and my team loses, I don't give a fuck because I won, right? Because my stats are up and that's going to correlate to a bigger contract. So yeah, it's part team game, but it's also part economic warfare amongst your own teammates. So yeah, I totally buy into the stats thing. They're all cognizant of their numbers and how to achieve them because that matters big time for them personally.
I think it was really interesting that ESPN started ESPN Bet during Scorpio season. And Scorpio is clearly aligned with gambling because you're dealing with, things like other people's money, right? And speculation. That's all very scorpionic. And, they could, if you think about it, right, they launched it, 10 weeks into the season?
Right. That's strange.
Isn't that interesting? Why? I mean, you don't think that was, in motion?
I think it was definitely planned. And I think you're onto something because I didn't even know about the scorpionic angle prior to doing the show. And I wouldn't have thought of that prior to the show.
If I was going to start a sports betting service, I'd start it during the month of Scorpio.
Okay.
Hands down.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the Sun-Mars conjunction, Mars being athletics, right, and performance. So maybe Gracie, maybe they consulted with Gracie.
Perhaps.
Yeah, maybe she told them.
Yeah.
Do it on the 14th of November.
Speaking of stats, as predicted, Shedeur Sanders got injured, and the Colorado Buffaloes got destroyed against Washington State. They lost by about 40 points. And one interesting thing I wanted to bring up about that game is that 8 players from Colorado were out with the flu, right? And you might think, oh, those guys are being pussies. They were out with the flu. Why didn't they play? They don't really have a choice. And, when you test positive for the flu or whatever, the medical staff can basically discount your ability to play. And I just find that interesting because here we see the medical industrial complex is directly above the sports industrial complex. And I think it's just kind of fucked up. It's like, hey, you're not going to play because you have the flu. And there were 8 players out and these guys play. What's your comment on that? You know what I mean? That's kind of crazy, Well,
clearly it affects betting lines.
Big time.
I mean, we saw that during COVID. We talked about that before where players were tested positive. Like the entire quarterback room, the Denver Broncos, tested positive. And they had to play a guy in the practice squad. He was a wide receiver, hadn't played quarterback since his sophomore year in college. He was an option quarterback. They kept the game on the books, right? That's how these things work.
Yeah.
Astrological has a really interesting comment here. It feels like the whole star system is in the finishing season of an intense sports game. It does feel like that. It feels like we're kind of getting into like the final innings here, right? Yeah. Like, the 2-minute warning or the bottom of the ninth. It feels like things are really kind of wrapping up. and who's going to win the game, right? Is it going to be the home team or the visitors? And you can take the visitors any way you want, right? But that's a really good comment. It does feel like that because we're kind of at end game drama on a collective level. It feels that way.
Yeah, and so you're saying now, astrologically, between now and April, it's going to be super intense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, April things are just getting cooking up, man. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got that eclipse in April, and it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
It'll be a big deal. And last night at my Sunday night show, I talked about the day that the Civil War started. I think, on April 11th, April 12th, and it was the occupation of Fort Sumter. So it was April 12th to April 13th, 1861. So it starts on April 12th at Neptune's at 29 Pisces, and then Fort Sumter surrenders on the 13th of April. Neptune's at 0 Aries, right? And that's officially like, okay, this is when Lincoln says we're in it now, right? Now we're throwing down, and that's Neptune and Pisces. That's coming at the end of 2025. That same Neptune and Pisces. And the other thing that I saw that I forgot about last night with that chart is that both the Moon and Mars were in Gemini at that time. Of course, we're dealing with Gemini energy and the split between the country and the North and the South and the blue and the gray, all that free Masonic shit. It's all part of the alchemy of opposites, right?
Yeah.
So, that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with Neptune in the position that it was at the start of the fucking Civil War in 1861 when it goes to 0 Aries. Oh, throw Saturn in there as well this time, right? Which has a whole other wrinkle. I mean, really, between the end of 2024, because we'll be deep in eclipse zone, right? The end of 2024, we'll be in deep eclipse zone all the way through to the end of 2028. Those 4 years, and if you wanted to pin down 3, from 2025 to 2028, are going to be 3 of the most intense, hellish, powerful, harrowing times that we have experienced together on a planet that we have any kind of memory with. That's all coming. Right. Like,
yeah. Instead of being gloomy about it, I'm like strangely excited for that in a fucked up way.
Again, you're in your 30s, right? You can't be excited for that.
Right.
As long as you stay in shape.
Yeah.
Stay
healthy.
You kick out to take names during a time like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I've got to be a general, like hang out at the top of the hill with my binoculars.
Yeah. With your binoculars looking at the stars.
So I can say I could tell the troops where to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Tell us what energies are happening.
Cool. But it was smart for them to start their ESPN bet, fucking Scorpio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny as
hell. And as far as Colorado goes, Deion's getting humbled, man.
Dude, they got their fucking asses kicked, and this week is going to be bad. They're playing Utah. I think the spread is going to be like 41, like literally 41 points. I think Utah will be favored by. I'll check it right now. Utah versus Colorado spread because, it's going to get ugly. I think personally.
So Utah has to play starters because it's got like bowl.
Okay.
Stuff,
okay.
Right?
The spread is 21.5. I want to take Utah in that spread.
Okay. Here's the question.
Yeah.
Do you think Shedeur Sanders plays? I say he doesn't.
I think he does to avoid a huge embarrassment. I think that if their backup were to play, they'd lose by about 60. And I think if Shedeur plays, they'll put 21 points on the board. And I think they might come within 30.
Let's look at his status.
So I think his dad's going to force him to play because what they're thinking about now is just recruiting going into, the next year. And they've had a few decommits recently. They had a 5-star wide receiver decommit at an IMG academy. He decommitted. They had a center, an offensive lineman who they really needed, just decommitted today. He's going to Missouri instead of Colorado. So,
There you go. From the Denver Post, Deion Sanders, CU Buffs, please shut Shedeur Sanders down before Utah Utes finished what Wazoo started. Make the beating stop, Coach Prime. The Utes are Colorado's bowl game now.
Yeah.
There's no reason for CU's QB1 to play in it.
I've never seen such a pathetic headline. That's like a plead. You know what I mean? Have you ever seen a headline like that? Like, that's the most aggressive white flag I've ever seen.
No. He looks like a cuck.
Who?
Sean Keeler. Looks like a cuck.
Yeah, he looks awful.
He looks like a bear in a male porno film.
Yikes.
I'm sure he's a nice guy. Let's see. Yeah, man, we've seen enough. There's a time and a place for macho, Coach Prime. In Salt Lake City next Saturday, ain't it? We've seen enough. More than enough. Washington State came into punishment on the Palouse with the Pac-12's third worst pass rush. The Cougars had racked up to 17 sacks over their previous 10 games. They held up 4 in the game's first 12 minutes, setting the tone for a 56-14 blowout. They knocked the younger Sanders, CU's QB1, 5 minutes into the second quarter. Wazoo's defensive line, nice bunch. The Utes' defensive front, straight nasty.
Is this Utah a serious article?
Yeah, man.
Wow.
He says, quitter? No. Number 2, come on. If Shedeur was a quitter, he would have stayed down in Arizona State. He would have come out for the second half versus UCLA. Shut him down. We don't. Not suiting up for Utah isn't quitting. It's self-preservation. It's just not responsible coaching. It's responsible parenting. Wow. Right? Now Deion is being indicted as a parent. That is a line, dude. It's responsible parenting.
This article is
sure I haven't talked to Shedeur about it. Deion Sanders coached a miserable game with miserable flu-like symptoms, but I'm pretty sure he wants to finish.
Yeah, I think he's going to play. He has to.
It's time for Sanders to pull down the curtain and get ready for what Project Prime was really all about. 2024, year 2, the sequel. So now he's building up why he wants to shut him down.
Interesting. That's the most hardcore capitulation I've ever read in my life. That's wild. But, we'll see how it goes. I think he's got enough media visibility to where they should do okay in recruiting, but currently they're ranked number 69. In the entire country, they're ranked number 69 in recruiting. So it'll be interesting to see if any of these players that he brought in jump ship, transfer to some SEC schools, Big Ten schools. We'll see how it goes. It'll be interesting a little bit. I know they do have some big time recruits that they have committed, but I don't know, man. How do you see year 2 going down with Mr. Sanders?
Might be marginally better.
Yeah, probably. I think they'll get to like 6 or 7 wins because they're essentially dropping a division.
I don't think he's a great coach. I think when his kid graduates, he'll leave.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
He's not there to coach.
Yeah.
Johnny Mac Williams from Decatur, Georgia.
Right.
I don't think it's happening.
So what else is going on in the world of sports, man? What else is there's plenty going on in the world, but Musk sues Media Matters. Okay, 22-year-old sues Musk. Okay. I'm just pulling up Drudge Report right now. Just getting the daily bullshit in there.
So the Eagles are losing 17-7 at halftime.
Okay. Against who are they playing?
The Chiefs.
Oh, the Chiefs? Yeah, I think you're totally right about the Chiefs being the team of the decade and it being reflective of a warlike recruitment scenario where they're this Aries-oriented team and they're going to be sort of the team of the decade, kind of how the Pats were for about 2 decades. Because they're going to be deep in the playoffs. That's a given.
And you know the Chiefs have never played a road playoff game.
I did not know that. That's a
Under
fucking
Pat
setup.
Mahomes and Andy Reid, they have never played a home playoff game. Away playoff game, road.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a crazy statistic.
It's a crazy stat, right?
Yeah.
So they've had every single advantage
Mm-hmm.
since these two have teamed up and been fairly dominant for the most part. I think they're beatable, though. I think the Chiefs are beatable.
Yeah. So have you ever hosted a debate, like a political debate or like a philosophical debate?
Sounds interesting, though.
I've done it. And I brought that up because something I've been thinking about. I think the debate to have on the internet is E. Michael Jones versus Dr. Shiva on the subject of revolution, because they have two very different schools of thought. You know, I've read E. Michael Jones's books, a few of them, and he seems to think that revolution is sort of engineered and it's ultimately a bad thing. Versus Dr. Shiva, on the other hand, he's more of a Marxist-Leninist style advocate of systems revolutions over time. So, I mean, I've hosted a few really big debates. I hosted this kid, Nick Fuentes. This is back in 2018, but Nick Fuentes versus Styx Hexenhammer 666 on the topic of religion in the United States. That was huge. I hosted Nick Fuentes again against Adam Kokesh about like libertarianism versus statism. Jay Dyer versus Jim Goad on the boomer question. And it's just like when I've been reading E. Michael Jones's books and I listen to Dr. Shiva, they have two totally different views on revolution, right? And I think that would be a really, really good debate, because you said you hosted E. Michael Jones on your
I've had
podcast.
E. Michael Jones on a couple times.
Yeah.
And he's brilliant. He's a Taurus.
Interesting. And what are the implications of that for him?
Well, he's a Taurus. Shiva is a Sagittarius.
Right.
So they're going to come at the world from a very different point of view. Now, there's some kooky Taurans out there, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
But E. Michael Jones is very, very grounded, right? He's very grounded in tradition and Catholicism, and he believes that there is a spiritual order to the world, right, to the universe.
Yeah.
And that revolution is something that upsets the spiritual order, right? And that revolution is usually performed by non-believers or Satanists or Luciferians,
right?
Because they're in the business of chaos, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where he comes from. Shiva, being a Sagittarius, is in the business of expansion and wanting to, break through and break down systems. So normally a Sagittarius would adopt a system for a while, get use out of it, and then would have to transcend the system, right? And so that in and of itself can be revolution. I'll give you an example. Bruce Lee is a Sagittarius, and Bruce Lee is one of the most philosophical, martial artists that ever walked the face of this earth. And Bruce Lee starts off with Kung Fu as his system, right? And then he moves into his own system that he invents called the Jeet Kune Do, which is the way of the open fist. And so he always talks about systems and transcending these systems, and as a martial artist, incorporating kind of new things. So he did this movie called Game of Death. In Game of Death, the idea is that there's this building, and on every floor there is a fighter with a different style, and he has to take them on. And so what he has to do is he has to drop his system every time he encounters one of these fighters, and then he has to do something new, right? And so this is the metaphor. And he ascends, right? He ascends up the building, and he gets to the final floor, and guess who he fights against?
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
That's right, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And so with Jabbar, he has to, again, scrape all of his systems, everything that he's sort of synthesize and kludge together from the previous levels, right? So that's what Sagittarius does. Sagittarius will mine a system for a while, and it'll hit the wall, and then it has to break through that system. So I think that's the revolutionary piece that Shiva has in being a Sagittarius. So he and Michael would come at things very differently.
Right.
And Michael is much more into like the spiritum organum, right? And whereas Shiva is not. And Michael, and then religiously, they're just very different. Michael's a hardcore Catholic, and Shiva is, a polytheistic Vedic, schooled on metaphysics. So they're just very different.
Yeah. So speaking of Catholic, you potentially have a interview with Michael Hoffman soon, I saw.
I'll get to that. I just want to address Robin's
Okay.
comment here. So it's weird. They arrested Gary Petway, who is the guy who skated into Adam Johnson's neck.
Yeah.
But because the UK goes about things in a very strange way, they didn't release his name. Like, who the fuck else could it be?
Right.
Right. Like, oh, was it some dude on the way to the hospital that stuck his fingers in there and made the wound bigger? No, there's only one fucking person who did it. But apparently they have this weird thing in England where they don't allow people's names to be broadcast. I don't know, whatever. I guess it's all right.
But it's safe to assume he's been arrested. The guy who tried to guillotined.
Yeah, he has been, right?
Okay.
But again, I guess arrest means something different in England. Like arrest in England, he's held under suspicion and he's being questioned versus being charged. Because usually that's what happens in the United States, right? You're arrested and you're usually charged with something. So anyway, I just wanted to answer that question.
Yeah.
I wanted to have Michael Hoffman on because he's just done a book on Ezra Pound.
Okay.
And I bet it's really good. Because Ezra Pound is one of the more interesting characters in American history. So Michael didn't have any DMs, so I just tweeted him.
Yeah.
And then I guess he looked at my Twitter feed, liked my Twitter feed, so he started to follow me.
That's cool. Yeah, he's one of my favorite authors. Those are probably my two favorite authors at the moment are E. Michael Jones and Hoffman.
Yeah, and those guys actually write, right?
Yeah,
They
big
write
time.
things.
That guy fucking like E. Michael Jones is a producer.
He's
Of
prolific.
literature.
E. Michael Jones is also very funny. He's got a very good sense of humor.
Yeah.
If you've ever really listened to him.
But Hoffman, man, he's deep into the gravy. Very deep.
Yeah. Hoffman is more of like a meta symbolist. E. Michael Jones has an amazing grasp of history and understanding what happens in historical trends. And I think Michael Hoffman probably has some of that, but Michael Hoffman's a meta symbologist, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. He'd
Read
be
a few of his books.
Yeah. Well, Al,
Yeah.
I think we've been pretty fucking serious for the last.
It's been a
2
serious
hours.
show. So
Been a very serious show.
yeah. All right. I can't think of anything else. I
think
think we got
I
next
actually
week.
have people that follow the show.
Yes.
They've been concerned about your sleep. Are you sleeping now?
Yeah, I got some sleep. Yeah. Last week was fucked up. I just didn't sleep for like a full night. And it was kind of fun in a weird way. It's like when you don't sleep for a full night, the next day at work, it becomes like kind of like this weird like challenge, and it's kind of a fun challenge where it's like, okay, I haven't slept in 24 hours. So it's the same day at work, but it's just a little bit more challenging. I have to concentrate a little bit more. You know what I mean? So no, I've been getting awesome sleep. That just happens to me like once a month or so. The Al Dawg is just howling at the moon once a month and just doesn't really sleep for like, a night
Right.
or just get like 1 or 2 hours, just one night a month.
Is that
You know
when
what
you're
I
on your male period?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Not maybe once a month, but more so like just every so often. You know what I mean? It just might happen once in a while.
Yeah.
So.
All right. I think we're out of here.
All right, man.
Al, thanks for being here. Thanks for everybody for stopping by. Hit the like button. That's really important with the algorithm. And please subscribe to the show and get the notification. And we'll see you back here on Monday night. Oh, Astral Guide. Caught it right here. Where is it?
Menopause. Menopause. That is funny. Okay, I should not have said once a month. I should have said once every 2 months or something like that. But you know what I mean. Whatever. And I try to make it more masculine by saying I was howling at the moon. But whatever. Once every couple months, you just
it's okay.
Sleep. You know what I mean? It happens.
You could be
fucking happens. All right.
You could be a sensitive Virgo here. It's okay.
All right. Well, I don't consider myself that sensitive of a Virgo. I feel like I'm more of I don't know, man. All right. We're done being serious. I'm out. All right, guys. See you next week.
See you next week, Al.